You're on the clock. Antonio Gibson or Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Find out who we're taking in this episode of Triple Play's Fantasy 15. What's going on, everybody? Back at you with another Triple Play Fantasy 15. It's your boy D-Mendy02 back on the mic here, joined by my partner in crime, Eric, who's at Triple Play Fantasy. What's going on, man?
Not much. I like how you had CEH in the opening credits. I hope you don't use that as an argument of why you should draft him.
I mean, the shiftiness you just saw in the intro alone should sell you.
Oh my gosh, you're right. From one clip that probably didn't score a touchdown, you need to draft him.
Yeah, but we're going to break down between the two who you should draft, because right now, Fantasy Pros ADP has Clyde Edwards-Helaire ranked as RB17. Antonio Gibson is RB12, and this is according to PPR scoring on Fantasy Pros, which takes 5 sites and gives the average, or right now it's 4 sites. It will be more, but they give the average of what they're ranked. So again, if you haven't already figured out, in this episode, we are ranking Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus Antonio Gibson. Doc, they say that put age before beauty. Obviously, I'm older than you, so I'll take the beauty. You can pretend you're older than me. Why don't you go first and tell us why we should be taking Antonio Gibson first?
Well, it's funny because I look older than you with the facial hair, but they're going to have a new quarterback there, and I'll give Adam Koffler some credit for this because Ryan Fitzpatrick last year never targeted his running backs fewer than 6 times in his full 7 games starting. Rivera, when he was the coach of the Carolina Panthers, gave Christian McCaffrey 7.4 targets per game in 2017 and 2018. Last year, there were only 2 games where Antonio Gibson had 20-plus carries. One was against Dallas, where he had 36.6 fantasy points. That's his ceiling. And the other one was close to a 20-point game. So this is a guy that only had 33 carries in college. He had 77 touches in his 2 years at Memphis. He's somebody that doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him. And I know that was kind of a scare for Jonathan Taylor is, hey, he's had a lot of involvement already at Wisconsin. So I think Antonio Gibson has a young body. I think he's going to be fully recovered from that turf toe injury. And I'm excited for him in year 2.
So again, let me ask you here. The turf toe injury, you brought it up. Is that not something that scares you potentially from drafting him? Because it was something that kind of hampered him at the end of last year, and those things can kind of linger a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a concern anytime that somebody's injured, but they had the entire offseason. They played 1 game in the playoffs against Tampa Bay, so they were eliminated in January, and they won't be playing meaningful football probably until August or September. So that's a 7-8 month recovery. I mean, keep in mind, an ACL tear is a 9 to 12 month recovery. So a turf toe is really a sprain of the big toe. I'm not as concerned about that being a long-term injury as opposed to like an ACL like we're seeing with Saquon, who's getting drafted in the top 5 running backs.
All right, well, I'm prepared to counter with a lot of stuff for you. So better strap yourself in because, boy, you're about to be in for a doozy of a ride here. Let's talk about my guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who has had a pretty solid rookie season. I think people kind of wrote him off because he wasn't producing to the hype that he was built up. And part of that, I built up the hype as well. I thought he was going to be a top 5 PPR back last year. So looking at the surface level numbers, you have 13 games. He was 17th in the league as far as rushing attempts, 19th in rushing yards. He was 25th amongst running backs, minimum of 100 carries with a 4.4 average. Only had 4 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for 42nd. But he had 1,100 yards from scrimmage, which was actually 14th amongst running backs. So you consider, he had a down year. 1,100 yards from scrimmage is actually nothing to sneeze at. So let's take a look at why things from last year aren't going to repeat this year with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So we got to start first with the Chiefs' offensive line, of course. According to ESPN's analytics index, the Chiefs had a 67% O-line run blocking win rate, which was 31st out of 32 teams in the NFL. The patchwork offensive line also lost Pro Bowl tackle Mitchell Schwartz in week 6 and was destroyed by injuries all season, which Again, if you have a patchwork offensive line, no holds for the running back, no push. Bad news for our guy, CEH. But look at the Chiefs going into 2021. They added Pro Bowl tackle Orlando Brown, stud guard Joe Thuney, who's regarded as one of the best guards in the league. You added Kyle Long, who did hurt his leg, but he's expected to be back for week 1. You drafted center Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma, who's going to be depth there as well. You also have the veteran Austin Blythe from the St. Louis Rams, or the Los Angeles Rams, who actually was their starting center last year. You add in Laurent Duvernay-Tardif and Lucas Niang, who are 2 offensive linemen, great offensive linemen for the Chiefs, that both opted out of 2020 due to COVID. So you add all that in, you have great depth and great guys on the offensive line to help provide more of a boost for CEH. But let's get back to CEH. According to PFF, he was actually not a bad rusher by any means for what you gave him. He had a rushing grade of 76.8, which was number 18 among 47 qualified running backs. He also had 0.19 missed tackles forced per attempt, which was tied for 14th in the league. And he had 0 fumbles and 217 touches. Eric, is 0 fumbles good?
Okay.
But let's stray away from the fumbles for a second. Also, people look at his goal line work, right, Eric? Because he couldn't get in the end zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at his end zone work. He did only convert 2 out of 10 attempts from inside the 5-yard line. The rest of the running backs, 1 out of 6 combined. And that 1 touchdown was from Darrell Williams. So again, it wasn't just CEH. That's every single running back on the Chiefs not being able to score or find the hole because none are given from the offensive line. Then you look at Andy Reid's history with running backs. In Reid's 22 years of coaching, his starting running back has failed to finish at least as an RB2 twice in PPR scoring. So in 22 years, a running back has finished outside the top 24 only twice. So you're getting that top 24 floor right from the jump. And CEH was already RB21 last year. And I would expect him to make that leap going into next year. Now let's talk about Le'Veon Bell, who is what single-handedly sunk CEH's value. If you look before Le'Veon Bell joined the fold, the first 6 weeks of the season, CEH averaged 17.8 carries, 5.2 targets, and 110.3 yards per game the first 6 weeks of the season. That after they brought in Le'Veon Bell, those numbers plummeted to 10.6 carries, 3.3 targets, and 57.8 yards per game. So the yards per game went in half. The carries went down about 7 carries a game, and the targets went down about 2 targets. So not great. But if you look at those first 6 weeks of the season, the only running backs that touched the ball more were Joe Mixon, Zeke, and Derrick Henry. Those are the only running backs that had more touches than CEH the first 6 weeks of the season. The Chiefs add in Elijah McGuire and Jerick McKinnon are the only 2 new running back additions to the Chiefs. So I would expect with Le'Veon Bell gone and that being the only additions the Chiefs made, you're going to expect similar rushing volume that you saw the first 6 weeks of the season. The last thing I'm going to say on CEH, and then Eric, you can just sit there and be stunned. He only dipped below a 50% snap percentage once and had a 60% snap share as a rookie overall. And according to Player Profile, CEH was 7th amongst running backs in yards per reception and was already running routes 18 per game as a rookie. Combine that with the increased rushing numbers, and his chart is going up. I would expect a lot of positive regression coming into next season. And this is a guy that, again, you could feel comfortable drafting as a top 10 PPR back in 2021.
So, David, I want to touch on the goal line carries because you said he had 10 for the season. 5 was in the first week. So they obviously didn't give him a lot of volume. And he is 5'7", 207. Darrell Williams is 5'11", 224. So that worries me that when they're trying to pound the ball in close, that they might just give it to the bigger running back itself. Now, my other concern is, and John says this on our football pod all the time, the Chiefs are very gimmicky in the red zone. They do a lot of shovel passes to Kelsey. They maybe might do a Mahomes bootleg, a Tyreek Hill end around. I think that they're a team that runs the ball north to south fewer than the majority of teams. Is that something that's concerning to you as a Chiefs fan and as a CEH owner?
Well, don't forget, Eric, when they had Kareem Hunt, look how much he was featured in the game plan. And that's what they were trying to do with CEH from week 1 when they gave him 5 times inside the 10. I think when they are inside the 5, assuming, again, with this offensive line upgrade, they're also trying to take pressure off of Mahomes so he doesn't have to put the ball in his hands in those situations and make sure he stays healthy. So if they get in close, they're going to try to run the ball. The gimmicky plays were because they couldn't pound the ball in, right? And that would be expected to be changed this year with the offensive line. Pretty much, they added 8 new offensive linemen. So I would expect that to be an emphasis from close in. And again, the Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill gimmicky plays, again, those work and those will be thrown in. But I would expect CEH's volume, which again, for people that don't know, Maurice Jones-Drew is the exact same size and the exact same weight. So he's literally the same size as Maurice Jones-Drew, and he can pound it in no problem.
Maurice Jones-Drew is definitely an exception. I think a lot of running backs are used sparingly when they're that small. And it's funny because Kareem Hunt is similar to Darrell Williams' size, where he's 5'11", 207, and Darrell Williams is 5'11", 224. But you bring up the depth chart. I actually like the Washington football team better at the running back. They have J.D. McKissick, who I don't think is going to be that much of an impact with Alex Smith.
He's going to be the passing game back. He had 8 catches last year.
Yeah, but they're going to have a different quarterback, one that doesn't dink and dunk as much as Alex Smith did. I think Peyton Barber is on the downside of his career, and they have Jarrett Patterson. Antonio Gibson had 11 touchdowns last year. And like I said, his ceiling, his career high was 36.6 fantasy point game. For as much as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his highest was 20.9 in PPR. So I think, yes, he does have a safe floor, but because the Chiefs offense is so explosive and there's so many people that touch the ball, I don't think he's going to be as featured. I think you're going to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire only had 220+ games last year for the amount of carries and volume that you said. I think if he's not getting the touchdowns, and he might get a slight bump, but when it gets in close, Antonio Gibson is going to be the guy. And that is where a lot of the value lies for running backs, is cashing in on those short scores.
But you brought up Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he doesn't dink and dunk. And at the same time, he also airs it out more. And you're not having a run-first offense with Ryan Fitzpatrick there now. You also have a defense that's really, really good and is probably going to limit the amount of opportunities that you're going to be on the field because it's not going to be a high-scoring game, right? So at the end of the day, that offensive ceiling being a lot further down with a great defense, and then you also have a pass-happy quarterback, I would expect Antonio Gibson's total volume to probably go down as well.
I think
CEH in one of, if not the best offense, it's a top 3 offense. You also have him losing all the competition he pretty much had. Darrell Williams usually is a third down 2-minute emergency running back, or again, if they need to punch it in, CEH can't get it in. But CEH, I would expect, is going to be like the first 6 weeks of the season. He was the 4th highest amount of touches amongst running backs. So he's going to get the ball. I don't understand RB17. That to me is so disrespectful. And if he stays at that value, I'm going to have him on almost every single one of my teams.
We can agree that RB17 is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. So again, who are you taking? Are you taking Antonio Gibson around RB12? Or you like the value that RB17 Clyde Edwards-Helaire offers? Let us know in the comments below, because I like to say that I won this argument and I like to hold that over Doc's head. So we'll see how that plays out. But tune in, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We drop Fantasy 15s every single week. We have George Kittle, Darren Waller coming up. We've also got some great Devy content. We've also got, of course, all the podcasts, Fantasy Foodies, Movie Minutes, all the great stuff on this YouTube channel. So please make sure you subscribe, check us out. But until next time, I'm D Mendy. We'll catch you guys next time.